I'm sorry. That's not what I'm saying at all. Please, just listen to me. How many times have you said this thing, that statement, or something very, very close to it? Unfortunately, biblical listening is not all that common these days. What is biblical listening, you might ask? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode of Leadership for Today.
Well, today we are going to be looking at the topic Tim has already introduced for us. It revolves around this issue of listening to other people. And so our situation that has been presented to us is a leader is asking IBL, thinking through these processes of listening to each other. His thought is that he feels like he listens to people, but his people that is part of his team are telling him that he's not actually a good listener. And so we're wanting to look at this question today of, is it possible that he is not a good listener? Or is it possible that, you know what, the people on his team, they just need to understand that he's in charge and they just need to do kind of what he says and everything will be better. So we kind of want to wrap our minds around this idea of active listening, biblical listening, as we'll wind up referring to it, and really starting to think through a little bit of this as we introduce this topic from the book of John, chapter 10, verse 14, where John records for us, "I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and mine own know me." And so thinking about loving one another, thinking about leading the people on our team, processing through that. Derek, can you kind of maybe work us through maybe some negative sides, how we typically would respond or listen to respond when we're doing listening in an unbiblical manner? What does that look like?
Well, typically we listen kind of like radar. And what I mean by that is we listen to respond to what's being said. We're listening to folks and just looking for an opportunity to jump into a conversation. And I've noticed as time goes on in today's world, and even in the world of Christian leadership, we listen at a superficial level. And that's what we mean by that. Generally, we're just listening so we can be part of a chit-chat conversation of give and take, and I'm amazed at how rarely people probe or ask a follow-up question anymore. It's just back and forth like a tennis match.
Yeah, I think it's easy for us in the busyness of our life, in the you've got your opinion, I've got my opinion, that we're actually talking to each other, but no one is actually listening. I think within society as a whole today, I think that's what's happening. We're just yelling at each other. No one's actually engaging with one another. So as we think then about that, what you just described, that being listening to respond or listening to just get my point across, on the opposite side of that would be active listening, or what we would call at IBL, we would call biblical listening, listening in terms of how does the Bible direct us into that process? I think of two verses. First one is Proverbs 1:5. Let the wise hear and increase in learning. And then also we have James 1:19, where James records for us, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger." And so as we think about those two verses, especially kind of setting a framework for us for biblical listening, maybe let's take a good portion of this video and just kind of work our way through what are the actual processes. What does active biblical listening look like? So maybe do you have a thought that you want to throw out there, one of the first things that we can think of when we think of active biblical listening?
I'm listening to understand. I'm listening to gain wisdom. It runs all through Proverbs. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, Proverbs 1:5. So I'm slowing down my response time, and I'm listening to you, Dave. I'm listening to the person that may be in my office sharing a need. I'm listening, and I'm asking active follow-up questions to learn, to gain wisdom. Often we're working with people that may be struggling, and what they initially come to talk to you about has deeper things behind it. So I need to drill down. I need to make sure I'm hearing correctly. So the key connector here is to connect understanding to listening.
Yeah, I think that's in our fast-paced world, we don't like to slow down. We like to have quick conversations. We almost come into a conversation where we already feel like we know what the outcome of this conversation should be. And so I'm not even paying attention to what you're actually telling me. All I'm thinking about is as soon as you stop talking, I'm going to start talking. And we're not, like you say, slowing down and increasing our listening time. So active listening would be slowing down, increasing our listening time. We would also say, I give my undivided attention to that person. So in a world where cell phones and text messages and everything else are bombarding us, if I'm sitting on my phone texting somebody and trying to play on the internet, looking at websites, and while you're talking to me, I'm actually communicating. I don't really care about what you're saying. And so I need to give you my undivided attention. I should care enough about you to stop what I'm doing, put down what I'm doing, and say, okay, Derek, you've got my attention. What is it that you want to talk to me about? What can I help you with? How can I listen to you? We would talk about Proverbs chapter 2, verse 2, making your ear attentive to wisdom, and making sure that we're being proactive and intentional in that process. So what's another aspect of active listening, biblical listening, Derek?
And that's one of those little nuggets from Proverbs that you bring out, Dave, making your ear attentive to wisdom. Well, what am I doing to make it? Well, one of the things I'm doing, I'm asking clarifying questions. But what I heard, maybe I'm not sure what I heard. Can you clarify what you mean by this word or what you just said? I just want to make sure I'm hearing correctly. So I'm asking clarifying questions. I'm asking follow-up questions. I'm asking open-ended questions where the answer can't be yes or no. Why do you feel that way? Or why do you think that way? How did you come to feel that way? Things like that will get the other person, help the other person talk. And once again, it's helping me gain understanding and wisdom into the thing we're discussing.
Yeah, I think so much of our world today is affected by the craziness of our world that all draws our attention away from having good, effective communication, which we would argue at IBL is probably one of the greatest breakdowns in the relational issues that the bad communication, the poor communication, whether that's because I didn't listen to you or I didn't take the time to, like you say, ask some clarifying questions. You said something, I automatically assume I know what that means in my context. I've now gone a different route with the conversation, and I've now concluded some things that you never intended to have concluded. And so if we're not careful, that communication can go sideways. So we would also argue at IBL, we would say that I need to make sure I understand you. I need to understand, if you come in and you're upset, why are you upset? What's frustrated you? What's been the problem? Again, I think in our communication, active biblical listening process, like you said originally, just slowing down, taking time, because an extra minute or two in our conversation can be the difference between us having a vibrant relationship and us having a tense relationship, because I simply didn't take the time to slow down and really hear from you what you were actually saying. So
key. I do a listening check. We've been sharing back and forth. I tell you, or I tell the person, okay, here's what I think I've heard. I want to play it back to you, and you let me know if I heard you correctly. And boy, I've used that technique before, and it really helps make sure both of us are coming to the same conclusion about what we've been talking about. And this type of active listening we've been talking about. And you started out our conversation, Dave, by referencing the Good Shepherd. I know my own and they know me. This is part of that knowing one another. It's part of a leader who demonstrates to his flock he cares about them. And he cares enough about them to slow things down and listen and not let their concern, their needs, or something they want to contribute possibly to church leadership in some manner. He doesn't consider it trivial, and he wants to make sure he clearly understands it.
Yeah, taking that time, shepherding through the process, loving through the process. This demonstrates the love of Christ. It demonstrates a willingness to care about the person, a willingness to just take some time. And again, 1 or 2 extra minutes in our conversation can make all the difference in the world by just stopping, focusing, and listening. Of course, we know James 1:19, like we mentioned before, be quick to hear, be slow to speak, and slow to become angry. So, Derek, maybe a final thought you want to throw in as we wrap up today?
Well, just piggybacking off of that verse in itself contains the answer to someone who struggles with anger, struggles with the temper. They typically also struggle in this area of listening. So if you slow down and you listen to someone instead of letting it immediately fly all over you and get angry, there it is, God's wisdom and learning to listen instead of letting your anger take hold. A final thought, Dave. Leaders who are open door, there's an open door technique. I'm always listening. So at times we can employ that to where we invite people in and we're always listening to them. Other things, seeking out the always asking leader. I'm always drawing people in so I can listen to them. I love to get folks out to lunch. Maybe it's folks that I'm having struggles with right now. Take them out to lunch to listen to them. Two additional mechanisms to broaden their listening, to show our flock we care for them.
Well, I hope you were able to jot down a few notes from today's episode, things that won't get merely filed away in a cabinet somewhere, but things that you will actually apply to your life that you will continually go back to. If you realize that listening is something that you need to work on, remember that IBL is always here to help, and we would love to help you walk through this process of learning how to continue to listen better. You can contact us at our website, iblministry.org. It's right at the bottom of the screen. And as always, I am your host, Tim Hall, and this is Leadership for Today.